Hi everyone, welcome back to my show. This week I'm going to introduce you to a new tree that you haven't seen before, and we're going to talk a little bit about its origins, about its positive aspects and its faults, and how we can use a little bit of deadwood carving to remedy its most readily apparent fault. This tree is a San Jose juniper. My sensei tells me it's about 40 years old. I acquired it from another bonsai collection, and I've been working on it since the summer of 2008 when I acquired it. Now we'll turn it around and we'll look at what's currently the back of the tree. When I acquired the tree, it was in a blue glazed rectangular pot larger than this. The pot was really too large for the tree. This was the front of the tree. None of this existed yet. And this part was starting to grow upwards, and the tree was starting to turn back into an ordinary shrub, which is one problem with bonsai. They don't remain static, and one prominent bonsai artist described it as his work of art constantly trying to self-destruct. You can see here there are several pruning scars on the branches where I had to remove growth that was going upward and that couldn't be wired back down. And we're just starting to get regrowth here that's trainable, and next spring in the growing season we'll do more detail wiring on these other branches and start really working on secondary ramification on this tree. Now as we turn back around towards the front of the tree, you'll see the tree has a beautiful snag of deadwood at the base, and I've cleaned the moss away from it. You can't really have the moss hard up on the deadwood or the moisture will cause the wood to rot. But the biggest problem that this tree has right now is that the tree's trunk doesn't taper. And if we look at the trunk, we'll see that the trunk is almost a constant thickness from the base where the deadwood and the nabari is up through the tachiagari, and it's almost the same thickness all the way up here until it splits at the upper trunk and the second and third branches. So this is where we have a problem. The best informal bonsai trees should have a trunk that tapers from the base up towards the top. And although we do see a little bit of taper through the back of the trunk, we don't have that taper on the front of the tree. And that's because the tree's previous owners let these branches get out of control, and they thickened this part of the trunk to the point where it doesn't taper. Now, the only way to remedy this is by physically reducing or altering the trunk itself, and on a juniper we would typically do that through the creation of deadwood. My initial thought, and this is something that has to be very carefully planned out so that you don't injure or kill the tree, my initial thought was to reduce this area right in here, but the problem is this is the part of the tree's vascular structure that feeds this branch. So if you take this down here to create a nice little taper in here, that's going to end up killing this branch. Then I took a closer look and I noticed there's some deadwood already existing right in here where there's a pruning scar, and what we can do without imperiling the health of this branch is to create a shari right down through here and down to this part of the tree. So that's the project for today, is to work on a little streak of deadwood through here and then give the tree time to heal before we extend it further. I don't do this lightly. I've actually spent several weeks looking at this tree and figuring out that I can do this. There are several ways to create deadwood on a juniper, and the fastest and easiest way on a large one is to use power tools. Now, I always use proper safety precautions when using power tools, such as wraparound eye protection. And I've got all my clothing tucked in, nothing loose, nothing hanging out, nothing for the tool to snag on. So what we'll do is we'll just use our old Dremel tool here and just kind of go in. And we'll start by shaping the cut into the wood here so it doesn't look like such an artificial cut. Okay, what we're doing now is we're just extending that original deadwood down the trunk, and we're going into tissue that the tree doesn't really need to survive. You can see in the mid-trunk here it's actually bowed and swelled outward with vascular structure for the branches. And then we have some knot holes where some small branches have died. So we'll just go through there and we'll just bring this down like this. Okay, so we're going to come down a little bit more here, and then we're going to finish this. Now, I like the way this is now, and I really don't want to do too much more. I just want to make sure I've gone through the sub-bark layers to the heartwood, because we don't want this to heal back across. We prefer that it just callus around the edges. So we'll just clean this up a little bit. Okay, this concludes the carving of the deadwood on this tree. You'll see we started just below the upper trunk here, and we came back down to about the first bend on the trunk. I probably could have done a lot more and gone farther, but on something like this, you never want to inflict major trauma or imperil the health of the tree. So for this particular tree, I think this is pretty good for right now, and then we'll let this heal, and then we'll continue the work on this tree on a later occasion. There are several things you can do for aftercare on deadwood on a juniper. You can paint it with lime sulfur, which will bleach it white, or you can paint it with diluted India ink, which will give it sort of a grayish tint, or you can put wood primer on it, or a primer paint that you use for, say, bathroom on a house. That stuff is waterproof and fungus proof and so forth. Or on a juniper, you can simply leave it as it is, and it'll naturally weather to a very nice grayish color all by itself. And that's my intention with this particular tree, is not to do anything yet at this time. So let's do one more slow 360 and see how the tree looks now. And then the one last thing I wanted to address is, together with the deadwood, I'm contemplating changing the front of the tree. Right now the front of the tree is oriented towards the front side of the pot, but I'm thinking about rotating it just slightly. This piece of scrap wire would mark the new front, and that would help highlight the deadwood and distract the eye from the fact that the trunk lacks a physical taper in its structure. Thank you for watching, folks.